Hello YouTube. Today we'll be removing an alternator bracket on this particular machine. It is broken. Let me see if I can see that in there. Yeah. Luckily it just fell down and rested on this instead of causing some other issues. You can see whoever installed this alternator, this wasn't an original alternator. I didn't catch that when I first bought this machine, but it's under the classification of it isn't broke, and it keeps a battery charge. When removing an alternator, disconnect the battery, because this large wire is live, which usually goes to the positive, and has enough amperage to start welding things. I actually know a couple people who decide not to disconnect the battery and keep that wire live. On one particular vehicle, there was some fuel lines actually went on the side of the motor, and they accidentally tapped one of those and started a nice fire. Luckily they were able to put it out. Another one didn't want to disconnect battery because they felt, oh, I don't want to reprogram my radio. Shower sparks later, and somehow no exploding battery, no fire that time, and new cable, and he still had to reset his radio. So just make sure you disconnect the battery before monkeying with the alternator or starter or anything like that. You guys know how to turn a wrench, so I'll get back with you once I get this all taken apart and bring it to the shop. So the alternator bracket ended up being a little more involved than I thought it was going to be. The reason that bracket broke wasn't because of just fatigue and vibration. It was actually from alignment. I want to show you here. You look down. See how the belt comes up straight? Then it turns over toward the engine. And what I did is took a straight edge and went from the face of this pulley to the face of that pulley. And seeing how far back it was, it wouldn't even touch the face of that pulley once I had the bar lined up with that. And I also took the face of the crank down there and went up to the alternator to see how far away it was, and it's a touch over a 1/4 inch. And what led me to actually look into this was something I seen with the alternator. This is a straight edge I used. Fit in there fine. It's a little 2-foot level. You can use a straight bar or something, but I noticed this was sitting tight like this, and the holes were lining up just perfect. And I went, well, hey, that's not right. So I took the belts off, which I'll do right now. Maybe. I noticed when I had everything loose, this is what it wanted to do. When I lined at the top bracket here, it wanted to sit like this. See, now my hole's no longer, a hole in the back here doesn't want to line. So what it was doing is pushing it down, because the upper bracket up here, sorry, I'm trying to see in the camera here, and it's that I'm holding, see it's held by one bolt back here, is now lying down here. At first I was just going to take this bushing here and chuck it in my lathe, grind down, put washers here, but now that I see this whole alternator is too far back toward the engine, I'm going to actually extend it out toward the radiator. The fan and everything still clears. And how I'm going to do it is actually take and build a spacer for here. About the same measurement that I'm going to get down here when I set this to the bracket nice and square. So we're going to take a measurement of this gap and get a longer bolt for up here. Simplest fix probably would be just a few washers, which is probably what I'm going to do. Sand them until I get the right, sand one of the washers till I get the right dimension, and then snug that up. This is only going to be taking not so much forward and back force as it is just to keep the tension, since that's what it is. So I'll get back with everybody and measure that and bring that bracket in, and we'll rebuild that bracket. Get the right spacing on this, and hopefully they'll stop this from breaking. Here's our alternator bracket completely removed in all of its glory. Looks like this has been a repeat offender for breaking. Like I said, I bought this machine used, and I'm surprised I didn't catch this when I was inspecting it, but it's alright. Guy's weld held fine. It just broke past it because of the amount of stress this is having to put up with from a misaligned alternator. And who knows, maybe the guy who repaired it and put a different alternator on to get the guy through didn't realize that the upper bracket didn't align correctly. Because this bottom bracket actually brought it in line. It's about 3/8. It sits about 3/8 forward compared to the top bracket, so I can't just skim the top bracket and make it work. I did find a longer bolt though to extend that top bracket, so we'll just get some washers to work with that and bring my shim material, and we'll try to get it set nice and perfect. But what I'm going to do to repair this bracket is I'm going to V-bevel probably the back. Well, no, we'll do the front because this already kind of got my bevel. But I'm going to grind it off anyway because this metal is obviously weak and fatigued. And then we'll grind a bunch of this excess weld here, grind it down a little bit. I'll take a measurement from the edge here to make sure I get my gaps right so I don't overgrind. It's also got a little fudge room anyway because I see they slide it. So even if I'm off a little bit, probably won't throw too much off, but still I don't want to change the alignment of this alternator, which is why I'm going to measure this and make sure this, which is used as a reference to keep this bracket aligned, is the reason I'm going to measure that and make sure it's set up. I'll get back with you after I get done grinding. Here's the bracket all set up and ready to weld. I used the back of my vise to help me align it. Came out to about 6 1/8. I use an adjustable square so I can get this set the way I want it. I'm going to fill that with weld. It'll be slow going because what will happen is the weld will try to actually pull this piece up as the metal cools, so I'm going to have to tack it and get it held and move it to the other side, correct it, give that a few tacks. Then once I get it pretty much welded up, I'll flip it over, give it a little bit of grind on the back since it's just single V bevel, and bevel that out a little bit and give that a weld to make sure this is nice and solid. And then before it finishes cooling, I'm going to dip it in some oil to give it a little extra carbon, and then grind it to bring the heat back into it so that it's more of a springy type of steel and less likely to be brittle and just break. Alright, just finished welding it. Still got a slight glow to it. It's perfect for this. This may cause a 5-alarm fire, so if you think about doing this with old motor oil, be prepared for a fire. Swish the oil around. See, I got my fan going. Try to keep it out of here. Still sizzling. This will add just a slight bit of carbon without causing it to be super brittle. But that slight bit of carbon is the difference between a part breaking and not breaking. Then what we'll do is we'll go and give it our final grind after this. And the reason for that is it'll bring more heat back into it, which allows everything to stress relief. Because right now, because I dipped it in oil, it caused this to be a stressed piece. And it's going to be a bit more brittle because of that. But since I'll be grinding, it allows that heat to come back in
It'll bring it above 200 degrees, which will allow everything to relax. And it'll also allow it to be a bit more flexible. This had nippers nearby. I was like, oh, someone took my pliers. But that's okay. Not as hot as I've liked. I didn't get as much carbon buildup as I would like to see on there, but it did get carboned up. So I did absorb some. And we'll take and grind this down on the back here, nice and flat. That should be just enough heat. I've actually experimented with doing this and not doing this on a particular machine that was consistently breaking apart on each side of it. The parts I started doing this method with stopped breaking and haven't broken since. It was just kind of one of those things. I tried it out and thought, what the heck, I doubt using oil is going to add enough carbon compared to quenching oil, but I went, well, I thought it'd be a nice trick to share if you're in your home shop and thinking I'd like to get just a touch more strength out of a product that keeps re-breaking. Now if you're wondering, how can I tell if I've got this probably hot enough with just grinding? You just take and spit on a little bit. Hear it sizzle? Your saliva is full of mostly water. So what will happen is it will actually boil off at about 212 degrees. So you know you're at least over 200 degrees. Which will help stress relieve that. You can see a little bit undercut of my weld, but this should be plenty strong. I didn't grind that one, but now you can actually see the carbon buildup of dipping it. And since it has slight glow to it, I know it did pull some of the carbon into itself. And like I said, it's sometimes the difference between something breaking and something not. Got my just repaired bracket here. Take our anti-seize, just in case I gotta take this off some more time. Cut my bolts. Start off with the hole that isn't slot. Those are clean, otherwise wire brush them. Get this finger tight so it doesn't flop everywhere. Usually if you have a bolt with a large washer, such as this one, it usually goes toward the slot. Slotted hole, I should say. Now what I'm going to do to line up this bracket up here, so I'm going to snug this up a little. I'm not tightening it down fully, just snugging it up. Fan on this is a suction fan. So that's another reason that this bracket broke, is the belt's being pulled down, which creates a lot of extra force on this alternator. So when it's misaligned, that's just that much more force being exerted on it. And we're going to make sure this is still shimmed right through the whole travel. Seems to be. Oh yeah, it's pulling just slightly. But I'm going to give you a nice close-up of that and see if that gap will come through for everybody. And what I'm looking for. See? Almost no
gap. I mean, that's just very light for this length. That's not going to be too much stress up here. That's all I did to give it its slack. This is where it naturally sits. That's it. And that's over this whole length. So once I got this aligned, I thought I'd also show what happened, how bad it was misaligned. When I measure it, or use my straight edge, everything's almost right on par with everything. It even looks straight once you get the belt on. But it's so far off that my belts no longer can get tight enough. It was pulling that much force and that far in. No wonder that poor bracket was breaking. I wouldn't be surprised if this alternator will live a lot longer too, because of the lack of thrust being put on the bearing, and it's more of a side load. Yeah, look at that. I mean, so now I need to get new belts, but that's no biggie. They're looking like they need it anyway.